Okay, so in this video, let's have a look at differentiating some trigonometric functions and some logarithmic functions. So let's first of all start by trying to differentiate y equals sine of x. Well, just remember to differentiate trigonometric functions, write down your circle, okay? So I first of all start off with sine. Now, if I want to differentiate sine, that becomes cos. If I want to differentiate cos, that becomes negative sine. And if I want to differentiate negative sine, that becomes negative cos. And if I want to differentiate negative cos, I'm back to sine again. So just always draw down that little circle. Basically means that you can jump in at any of these functions. Differentiating them means that you're moving clockwise around the function, and it means that you can move to the next one. Okay. So here I've got y equals sine of x. So therefore I'm jumping in at this point here. I'm differentiating it, which means I'm going to end up with cos of x. So in other words, the derivative, so dy by dx, so the derivative of sine of x, I can just write as cosine of x. Okay. Similar kind of idea then, okay, if I want to take y equals negative cos of x, okay, y equals negative cos of x, well, okay, the derivative of that, so I could write it as dy by dx, but just to show you some slightly different notation, I'm going to write it as d dx of negative cos of x, okay. That should be equal to, well, let's have a look. I'm jumping in at negative cos of x, and I need to differentiate it, which means I move to the sine of x, okay? So basically, the derivative of negative cos of x is equal to sine of x. Okay, fantastic. Now let's have a look at differentiating some logarithmic and exponential functions, okay? So let's first of all start off by having a look at something like this. Let's try differentiating f of x equals 5 times the natural logarithm of x. Okay. So let's think about this. Well, listen, if you've got some constant times by a function that you already know how to differentiate, then the derivative is just going to be that constant times the derivative of that function, okay? So therefore, I know that if I have natural logarithm of x, okay, and if I want to differentiate it, then that thing should just become 1 over x, okay? So I know that for a fact, okay? And I've shown you why that is true in the other videos and in the lecture notes, okay? So therefore, if I want to differentiate this thing, so I'm going to write that as f prime of x, then I'm just simply going to write it as 5 times by the 1 over x, because I know how to differentiate natural logarithm of x, so therefore the derivative of 5 natural logarithm of x is going to be 5 times the derivative of natural log of x, so it's 5 times 1 over x. Now just to tie that up slightly, I'm going to write that as 5 over x, okay? Now let's have a look at this one. So let's have a go at trying to differentiate something like this. So suppose I get given f of x is equal to 3e to the power of x plus cosine of x. Okay, so let's have a think about this. So there's a couple of things going on. So first of all, if I want to differentiate this, I'm going to break it up into each term. So I'm going to first of all look at differentiating this term. Now just remember that I know how to differentiate e to the power of x, okay? By definition, it is just e to the power of x. And if you're not sure about why and you're sitting there going, what on earth is going on there, go back and have a look at the video where I explain what e is and why it makes sense that the derivative of e to the power of x must be equal to e to the power of x, okay? But essentially that just means then that because I know that the derivative of e to the power of x is just e to the power of x, then the derivative of 3 times by e to the power of x, in other words a constant times e to the power of x, is just going to be 3e to the power of x. That's not going to change. So let me write it in blue. Okay, fantastic. So now let's have a look at the derivative of cosine of x. We've got to add on the derivative of cosine of x. So just remember that if I write down my circle, so sine, cos, negative cos, and then back to sine again. If I want to differentiate cos, it means I'm here in the circle. So if I differentiate it, move clockwise, I'm down to negative sine, which means that the derivative of cos of x is negative sine of x, okay? So that there would be the derivative of 3e to the power of x minus sine of x.